Dudley Walker Morton, born in 1907 in Owensboro, Kentucky, was one of the most remarkable figures in the U.S. Navy during World War II, renowned for his bold tactical thinking and unique command style. Growing up in a town thousands of miles from the sea, Morton had little early exposure to naval life, yet from a young age, he displayed keen observational skills, intelligence, and a strong competitive spirit, qualities that would later form the foundation of his military career. He attended the U.S. Naval Academy, where he received formal training in seamanship, naval engineering, and naval tactics. In 1930, Morton graduated with honors, officially beginning his journey in the U.S. Navy. In his early years, he served primarily on surface ships, including cruisers and destroyers, quickly demonstrating leadership abilities and a distinct approach to tactics. However, Morton soon felt constrained by the rigid rules and traditional command structures of surface fleet service, where initiative and creative thinking were seldom encouraged. This realization led him to the submarine force, a domain where every decision could be life or death, and boldness often determined victory or defeat. Morton transferred to submarines in 1933, at a time when the U.S. Navy was heavily investing in undersea warfare strategy, but had limited combat experience. Before World War II, he served at various Pacific bases, observing and studying Japanese naval operations, particularly their tactics in the Philippines, New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands. Morton noticed that the Japanese Navy often moved cautiously in confined waters, relying heavily on deck gunfire. In contrast, U.S. submarines at the time were constrained by outdated doctrines, avoiding direct confrontations unless absolutely necessary. From these observations, Morton developed his own tactical philosophy. He believed that proactive attacks, leveraging speed and surprise, were the most effective defense, and only initiative could give U.S. submarines an edge against Japan. This approach challenged many traditional principles, but accurately reflected what Morton learned from real-world operations in the Pacific. Before the war, Morton distinguished himself not only through technical skill, but also through decisiveness and personnel management. He believed a submarine's effectiveness relied not just on equipment, but on the crew's coordination. Morton often organized high-pressure combat simulations, demanding that sailors respond to emergencies with maximum flexibility. He encouraged torpedo men, electricians, and officers to understand the vessel's overall tactical picture, not just their specific duties. This method built a crew capable of rapid, creative responses to unexpected situations, something the U.S. submarine force had not fully achieved at that stage. Beyond his technical skills, Morton was known for a strong, sometimes controversial personality. Nicknamed Mush, a friendly yet somewhat irreverent moniker, he was unafraid to challenge superiors or traditional methods if he believed his approach would be more effective. This earned him both respect and caution from other officers, but in the submarine environment, where every decision could mean life or death, Morton's risk assessment and decisiveness were powerful assets. He often emphasized that hesitation was the most dangerous enemy in undersea warfare. A fast, accurate decision was always better than waiting for orders. Historically, Morton's early career unfolded during a period of modernization and preparation for full-scale conflict in the Pacific. After Pearl Harbor in 1941, the U.S. submarine fleet faced the daunting task of cutting Japanese supply lines and sinking warships and transports, all while dealing with equipment, training, and intelligence limitations. Morton, with his pre-war experience and proactive attack philosophy, was seen as a key factor in improving submarine campaign effectiveness. He embodied the idea that individuals could make a significant difference through skill, boldness, adaptability, and leadership under pressure. As he prepared for command, Morton studied classic World War I tactics and previous naval exercises, always seeking improvement. He observed that U.S. submarines were limited to night attacks and relied on imperfect radar. Morton proposed daytime surface attacks, combining speed and maneuverability to outpace Japanese ships before they could fire. He also suggested reorganizing crew roles. Torpedo men were trained to grasp the overall tactical picture, and the officer of the deck observed the situation through the periscope, enabling Morton to make immediate decisions. This approach laid the groundwork for his later command style, emphasizing initiative and managed risk. Morton also focused on the psychological readiness of his crew. He understood that sailors needed to trust their commander, particularly in the confined, high-pressure environment of a submarine. He spoke directly with crew members, explaining the reasoning behind each decision and encouraging input during training exercises. This fostered a cohesive team ready for high-risk missions, where each member felt respected and responsible for collective success. Morton's personal background, strategic environment, and innovative approach placed him in a unique position in U.S. naval history. While not the only submarine commander in World War II, his combination of boldness, leadership, and tactical innovation made him stand out. Before commanding the USS Wahoo, Morton demonstrated that an individual could shape the course of war by leveraging knowledge, experience, and decisive judgment. His early years in the Navy were not only a period of learning, but also critical preparation in tactics, psychology, and personnel management, laying the foundation for both his successes and later ethical controversies. Dudley Mush Morton was thus more than a submarine commander. He was a symbol of daring strategic thinking in an era of total war. He exemplified how intelligence, experience, and personal courage could influence the outcome of conflict, while also raising questions about the line between effective tactics and ethics in brutal wartime conditions. From Owensboro, Kentucky to the Pacific, Morton's journey was a story of ambition, learning, and decisiveness, elements that created a naval legend remembered more than 80 years later. After years of service and experience in the U.S. submarine fleet, Dudley Mush Morton was appointed commander of the USS Wahoo, SS-238, in November 1942. The Wahoo, a Gato-class submarine, was equipped with advanced technology for the era: sonar, rudimentary radar, and 8 21-inch torpedo tubes, enabling Morton to implement the proactive attack tactics he had developed earlier. Upon assuming command, Morton understood that the vessel was not merely a combat tool, but a symbol of innovative thinking in the Pacific, where every decision could lead to resounding victory or instant death. From the very beginning, he applied the philosophy he had honed, taking the initiative in attacks, leveraging speed and surprise, and maximizing the crew's potential. One of Morton's hallmarks was his meticulous patrol planning. Unlike many commanders who strictly followed established routes and traditional tactics, Morton relied on intelligence reports, analysis of Japanese shipping patterns, and pre-war observations to identify critical supply routes. He noticed that Japanese convoys often moved along predictable paths, and attacking them in unexpected locations yielded maximum effect. Instead of merely ambushing, Morton employed flexible strategies, such as feigning retreat to lure enemies into advantageous positions or launching daytime attacks when Japanese vessels were unprepared. This approach exemplified Morton's proactive attack philosophy. Undersea warfare was not a passive game, but a direct confrontation where speed, imagination, and decisiveness determined victory. During Wahoo's initial patrols, Morton demonstrated outstanding command ability. In January 1943, on a patrol near the Truk Islands in the East Indies, he encountered a large Japanese convoy. Rather than waiting for nightfall, as regulations recommended, he chose to attack during the day, using the island's geography to conceal the submarine while employing radar to accurately target enemy ships. The result was the destruction of multiple transports, causing significant disruption to Japanese supply lines. This success boosted crew morale and proved that Morton's daring tactical philosophy could yield exceptional results. After this engagement, the USS Wahoo earned a reputation within the U.S. fleet as a nightmare for Japanese convoys. Morton not only emphasized attack tactics, but also cared deeply about crew psychology and morale. On the Wahoo, he established rules that encouraged creativity and collaboration. Officers and sailors participated in attack planning, from selecting targets to determining torpedo use. Morton frequently asked crew members to propose options and assess risks, allowing him to choose the optimal course of action. This participatory style contrasted sharply with traditional command, where orders were issued top-down and executed without input. Morton understood that in the confined, high-pressure environment of a submarine, initiative and personal responsibility were critical for survival. One of Morton's most notable tactics was using the submarine's speed and maneuverability to strike multiple targets consecutively. Rather than attacking a single ship and retreating, he implemented a continuous attack approach, allowing Wahoo to approach, fire torpedoes, and move immediately to strike the next target before the enemy could respond. This strategy required precise coordination among departments. Torpedo crews maintained readiness for continuous firing, the officer of the deck tracked targets, and Morton made rapid decisions. As a result, the Wahoo became an extraordinarily effective vessel, sinking numerous Japanese transports, disrupting vital supply lines, and weakening Japanese combat power in the Pacific. Morton was also renowned for his boldness in major engagements. In a February 1943 patrol, the Wahoo encountered a heavily escorted convoy, including destroyers and patrol ships. Instead of evading, Morton chose to approach and attack directly, using surprise and maritime terrain to avoid enemy fire. The Wahoo sank several Japanese vessels without significant casualties. This success earned Morton high praise from the U.S. Navy and struck fear into the Japanese, prompting stricter defensive measures on their shipping routes. Such feats cemented the Wahoo and Morton as living legends within the submarine force and reinforced the credibility of proactive attack tactics. However, Morton's command style was not universally supported by superiors. Some officers deemed his daytime attacks and close-range assaults on heavily escorted convoys too risky, fearing that a single misstep could result in the loss of the submarine and crew. Morton, however, maintained that calculated, proactive risk-taking was safer than passively waiting, a principle proven by the Wahoo's highly effective attacks with minimal losses. His approach not only produced spectacular victories, but also established a new standard for U.S. submarine commanders, where decisiveness and creativity were valued alongside adherence to orders. In addition to combat, Morton emphasized survival skills and emergency preparedness. He conducted training in evacuation, fire control, leak management, and equipment maintenance under pressure. He understood that even small mistakes in a submarine could be catastrophic. This thorough preparation enhanced combat capability and boosted crew confidence in his leadership. The combination of bold tactics and meticulous preparation made the Wahoo a formidable threat to Japanese shipping. Morton also excelled in intelligence analysis and enemy profiling. Beyond relying on radar and sonar, he studied Japanese ship behavior, patrol habits, speeds, and escort tactics. Using this information, Morton crafted optimal attack plans, exploiting weaknesses the enemy did not anticipate. These skills explain why the Wahoo was so effective and why Morton is regarded as one of World War II's most accomplished submarine commanders. Despite remarkable successes, commanding the Wahoo placed Morton in morally complex situations. He often had to weigh maximum target destruction against risks to his crew or potential civilian casualties on Japanese vessels. Morton typically chose bold but calculated options, prompting post-war debate about the boundaries between effective tactics and wartime ethics. Yet in the 1942-1943 Pacific context, where each patrol was a matter of survival, his decisions accurately reflected the pressures and demands of real combat. Under Morton's leadership, the USS Wahoo conducted numerous successful patrols, sinking dozens of Japanese ships, disrupting supply lines, and enhancing the U.S. submarine fleet's reputation. His proactive attack tactics, flexible between day and night operations combined with full crew coordination, became a model for other submarine commanders. Morton demonstrated that an individual leader, through intellect, decisiveness, and creativity, could exert influence far beyond the physical limits of the vessel under their command. At the end of January 1943, the USS Wahoo, under the command of Dudley Mush Morton, was conducting its second patrol off the coast of Southeast Asia. The primary mission of the U.S. submarine was to disrupt Japanese supply convoys, hindering reinforcements to Japanese forces in the Dutch East Indies and the Philippines, while also gathering intelligence on enemy naval activity. The wartime context was extremely tense. Japan was working to reinforce bases in the southern region, transporting troops and supplies from India and Malaysia to the battlefronts in New Guinea and Biak Island, while U.S. submarines sought to interdict these supply lines. The USS Wahoo, with Morton's bold, proactive attack style, became a prominent threat along maritime routes that the enemy least expected. On January 26, 1943, during a patrol near the Indian Ocean coast, Morton spotted the Japanese troop transport Buyo Maru, a vessel of approximately 5,700 tons. Intelligence indicated that the ship was carrying soldiers from the Japanese 26th Infantry Division from Singapore to Madras, India, along with Allied prisoners of war from India and Britain captured during earlier campaigns. Assessing the situation, Morton recognized that the Buyo Maru was a large transport, escorted by smaller Japanese patrol vessels, presenting both opportunity and risk. True to his proactive style, Morton decided to approach and attack, despite potential dangers from the escort. The USS Wahoo closed in on the Buyo Maru submerged, using familiar maneuvering techniques to avoid radar and direct observation. Morton commanded with precision. Torpedo officers double-checked the number and type of torpedoes. The officer of the deck calculated course and depth to maximize the attack's effectiveness, while the crew prepared contingency measures in case of detection. This meticulous preparation reflected Morton's philosophy. Success came from combining knowledge, experience, and coordinated teamwork. At approximately 1,500 meters, Morton ordered the first salvo of torpedoes. The torpedoes struck the main target, causing severe damage. The Buyo Maru listed, caught fire, and began to sink. However, Morton faced an unprecedented moral dilemma. The ship carried not only Japanese soldiers, but also hundreds of Allied prisoners. By modern wartime standards, attacking a vessel with civilians or POWs could have serious ethical consequences. Morton was aware of this, but in the Pacific War context, where passenger information was incomplete and the strategic priority was to inflict maximum damage on Japanese forces, he decided to attack, prioritizing tactical objectives above all else. After the Buyo Maru was struck and began sinking, Morton employed his continuous attack tactic, maneuvering the Wahoo to engage the escort vessels. The Japanese returned fire with small-caliber guns, but Morton's skillful handling and the submarine's agility allowed the Wahoo to evade most attacks. During this period, Morton ordered announcements via loudspeaker to remind the crew to rescue survivors if conditions permitted, while also preparing for a rapid withdrawal to ensure the submarine's safety. The consequences of the Buyo Maru attack were severe. Hundreds of Japanese soldiers perished, along with approximately 200 Allied POWs from Britain and India. The incident later became a prominent ethical controversy in submarine warfare history. Some historians criticized Morton for not clearly distinguishing between military targets and non-combatants, while others argued that he acted on incomplete intelligence under urgent strategic pressure, where neutralizing Japanese transport forces was of utmost importance. Regardless, the event highlighted Morton's decisive and sometimes controversial command style, prioritizing military objectives and tactical considerations. Within the USS Wahoo, Morton maintained high morale among the crew. He explained that war is an extreme environment requiring quick, decisive decisions, and that every member of the team must understand their responsibilities. Morton encouraged the crew not merely to follow orders, but to develop independent situational judgment, thereby improving the submarine's effectiveness in subsequent engagements. This approach fostered trust and cohesion, even as ethical debates occasionally arose. The Buyo Maru attack also provided important tactical lessons for the U.S. Navy. The engagement demonstrated the difficulty of accurately identifying passengers and ship types in submarine warfare. Morton's decision to attack amid uncertainty illustrated the necessity of decisive thinking and risk management in combat. The Navy subsequently emphasized improved intelligence evaluation procedures and developed guidelines for targeting vessels carrying civilians or POWs, aiming to minimize unintended casualties in future campaigns. Strategically, the Buyo Maru attack disrupted Japanese supply lines to forces in South Asia and New Guinea, while sending a strong signal regarding the capability and determination of the USS Wahoo under Morton. The submarine proved it could not only destroy smaller transports, but also confront large, escorted convoys, expanding tactical possibilities and influence in the region. The incident cemented Morton's reputation as a bold yet effective commander and helped set a standard for future U.S. submarine operations. Following the Buyo Maru engagement, the USS Wahoo continued patrols, incorporating lessons to improve target identification and attack tactics. Morton maintained his principle of proactive attacks, combining enemy behavior analysis, flexible maneuvering, and enhanced crew coordination. Although the attack remained ethically controversial, it exemplified the complexity and severity of Pacific submarine warfare, where every decision carried the potential for resounding success or disastrous consequences. Overall, the Buyo Maru attack fully reflected Morton's command characteristics: decisiveness, boldness, proactive engagement, and prioritization of strategic objectives over personal risk. At the same time, the incident underscored the ethical sensitivity inherent in warfare, where striking military targets could result in unintended casualties. The USS Wahoo and Morton became not only renowned for combat achievements, but also emblematic of the study of tactics, decisiveness, and ethics in undersea warfare. The Buyo Maru incident left a lasting legacy for U.S. submarine commanders, serving as a critical lesson in balancing tactical effectiveness with ethical considerations and decisiveness with caution. Morton continued refining his command style based on this experience, and the USS Wahoo remained a key strategic asset in subsequent patrols, where boldness combined with meticulous preparation allowed the U.S. to gain an advantage beneath the Pacific waves. After the attack on the Buyo Maru on January 26, 1943, the USS Wahoo under Dudley Mush Morton continued its patrols. But the incident left long-lasting military, political, and ethical consequences, becoming one of the most controversial events in World War II submarine history. In the short term, the tactical results were clear. Japanese supply lines to South Asia and New Guinea were disrupted. A significant number of Japanese troops were removed from the battlefield, and the Wahoo's reputation as a formidable submarine was reinforced. However, alongside these tactical successes arose profound debates regarding the ethics and authority of submarine commanders in wartime. One of the first aspects that drew attention was the number of Indian and British prisoners of war who perished in the Buyo Maru attack. Post-war reports indicated that approximately 195 prisoners, along with 87 Japanese soldiers, died when the ship sank. This raised a difficult question. Did the USS Wahoo have a responsibility to distinguish between civilian and military targets, and could attacking while prisoners were aboard be justified tactically? In the Pacific War context, intelligence about passengers on Japanese ships was often incomplete. Morton and his crew were not aware of the prisoners' presence until the ship began sinking, resulting in their being caught in the consequences of a tactical decision. From a military perspective, later scholars argued that Morton acted according to a total war principle. Eliminating Japanese transport targets was the highest priority, regardless of unintended risks. The USS Wahoo was renowned for bold, proactive engagements, and Morton believed that hesitation could forfeit opportunities to destroy important targets. From this viewpoint, the attack on Buyo Maru was a strategically reasonable decision, especially given Japan's reliance on maritime transport to maintain distant front lines. In the long term, the battle became a textbook example of U.S. submarine power and how submarines could reshape naval warfare. However, from ethical and legal perspectives, the incident sparked significant controversy. Some historians and military analysts argued that Morton had crossed humanitarian boundaries, as prisoners of war are protected under the Geneva Conventions. In the case of the Buyo Maru, Morton did not know the prisoners were aboard prior to the attack, yet the event highlighted the issue of command responsibility in wartime. The controversy was further complicated by subsequent actions of some Wahoo officers and crew, who reportedly fired on survivors or prisoners adrift, a behavior later viewed by many historians as a violation of the laws of war. Though in the chaotic and high-pressure conditions of combat, These actions reflected extreme psychological and operational stress. In the short term, the U.S. Navy did not punish Morton or the Wahoo crew. Morton himself emphasized that he acted based on the information and circumstances at hand, prioritizing tactical objectives and the submarine's safety. Other naval officers later acknowledged that the Buyo Maru incident was an exceptional case in submarine history, but also a valuable lesson in exercising greater caution when assessing targets and managing the consequences of combat. In this sense, the event became a key study topic for submarine commanders and military academies, emphasizing the balance between tactical effectiveness and ethical responsibility in future operations. The incident also had notable effects on media and public perception. During the war, information about Buyo Maru was limited and not widely disseminated. Only years later did historians review U.S. and Japanese naval records to reconstruct the full events and casualties. Once these reports were released, international audiences raised questions about the limits of wartime conduct, highlighting the difference between strategic theory and harsh operational realities. The Buyo Maru thus became emblematic of difficult wartime decisions, where commanders had to weigh military success against ethical responsibility. Beyond ethical debates, the incident influenced U.S. submarine policy and operational rules. The Navy began improving intelligence methods and target classification, developing new procedures to minimize civilian and POW casualties in future campaigns. The lesson from Buyo Maru was clear. Attack decisions must rely on accurate information, careful target assessment, and contingency planning for rescue if necessary, while maintaining tactical effectiveness. Subsequent submarine commanders were trained more thoroughly in recognizing civilian and soldier-carrying ships, helping prevent similar controversies. From a historical perspective, Dudley Morton and the USS Wahoo became symbols of U.S. submarine operations in World War II. Bold, effective, yet sometimes controversial. The Buyo Maru incident highlighted the complexity of naval warfare, where decisions are made rapidly, information is incomplete, and consequences can span decades. Morton is remembered not only for superior tactical skill, but also for the ethical dilemmas he and his crew faced, making the case a continuing subject of study for military and international legal scholars. In the long term, the Buyo Maru attack had lasting psychological effects on the submarine crew. Many sailors reported being haunted by the sight of survivors adrift and the unintended casualties. Morton, with his decisive leadership style, often reassured his crew that in wartime, decisions must be made quickly to protect the submarine and accomplish the mission, though the psychological scars could not be entirely erased. This experience contributed to studies on the mental health of World War II submariners, emphasizing that submarine warfare affected not only material outcomes but also human resilience. Legally, the Buyo Maru case became a reference point in the study of maritime laws of war. It raised questions about the responsibility of submarine commanders under incomplete intelligence, distinguishing military from civilian targets and the appropriate conduct when facing POWs. Many scholars cite the incident when analyzing modern laws of armed conflict, stressing the importance of accurate information and ethical standards while balancing tactical necessity and crew safety. After a series of daring campaigns and notable battles, especially the Buyo Maru incident on January 26, 1943, the legacy of Dudley Mush Morton and the USS Wahoo became an integral part of U.S. Navy submarine history, leaving profound lessons on tactics, ethics, and risk management in naval operations. From his earliest days commanding the Wahoo, Morton cultivated a reputation as a bold, decisive, and creative leader, an example many future U.S. submarine officers would study and emulate. One of the clearest aspects of his legacy was how Morton transformed submarine warfare tactics. Before the war, U.S. submarines generally operated cautiously, prioritizing ship safety over offensive opportunity. Morton believed that initiative, speed, and surprise were key to leveraging a submarine's advantages. Under his command, the Wahoo frequently approached targets at close range, struck multiple times in a single day, and seized every chance to sink enemy ships. This approach not only increased the effectiveness against Japanese transport vessels, but also reshaped the U.S. Navy's perception of submarines, from primarily reconnaissance and patrol roles to becoming a potent offensive force. Morton was also renowned for his crew training and management methods. He fostered a disciplined yet flexible environment, encouraging crew participation in decision-making while maintaining high morale and teamwork. These skills enabled the Wahoo to operate effectively under stressful and dangerous conditions, enhancing both survival rates and mission success. Post-war U.S. naval academies cited Morton's leadership style as a prime example of combining discipline, creativity, and individual responsibility in command. The Wahoo's operational achievements further underscored its legacy. Across its patrols, the submarine sank a total of 19 Japanese ships, about 95,000 tons, making it one of the most successful U.S. submarines of World War II. These accomplishments bolstered U.S. naval prestige in the Pacific, weakened Japanese combat capacity, and indirectly influenced ground campaigns such as Guadalcanal and New Guinea. The Wahoo's record became vivid proof of the submarine's strategic significance in total war, reshaping military assessments of naval tactics. However, Morton's and the Wahoo's legacy was not confined to victories or tactics. The Buyo Maru incident and the ensuing controversies sparked long-standing discussions about ethics and command responsibility. Historians, military scholars, and international law experts continue to cite the event when studying the principles of target distinction and limits on action under incomplete information. Although Morton was known for his boldness, he operated in a complex context. His decision to attack was based on limited intelligence, and the target included prisoners of war. The incident remains a critical lesson on balancing tactical effectiveness with ethical standards, now incorporated into modern submarine command training. Another aspect of the legacy is psychological and motivational impact. The Wahoo and Morton not only inspired their own crew, but also served as a model for the entire U.S. submarine force. Other submarines learned to exploit surprise, manage crews effectively, and maintain high morale under isolated and stressful conditions at sea. This influence extended beyond the war, as many former sailors and officers became instructors or trainers, passing practical experience to the next generation of submariners. Morton's and the Wahoo's legacy is also reflected in historical memory and popular culture. The image of a daring submarine, a decisive commander, and tense naval engagements has been depicted in numerous books, films, and documentaries, symbolizing U.S. naval combat ingenuity and tactical intelligence. The Buyo Maru incident and related ethical debates are referenced as examples of the complexities of war, where tactical decisions can have unintended consequences, and commanders must take responsibility for their choices. A further component of the legacy is its impact on subsequent laws of war and operational regulations. After World War II, the U.S. Navy studied cases like Buyo Maru to improve target classification, verify intelligence, and prepare contingency rescue plans. These measures helped minimize civilian and POW casualties in modern warfare, while allowing commanders to make rapid decisions within international legal standards. In numerous military studies and analyses of the laws of war, the Wahoo and Morton are cited as classic cases for examining the balance between tactical success and ethical responsibility. Ultimately, the legacy of Morton and the Wahoo lies in the combination of tactical effectiveness, exemplary leadership, and ethical lessons. It emphasizes that war is not only about the number of ships sunk or targets destroyed, but also about how commanders make decisions, manage crews, and how history judges their actions. Dudley Mush Morton became a symbol of a generation of leaders willing to take risks, accept responsibility, and confront the ethical consequences of wartime decisions. While the USS Wahoo remains a model of the power and effectiveness of U.S. submarines in World War II,